Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Alabama Student Eagles podcast. My name is Brady Johnson.
And mine is Joe Blocker.
And today we are joined by two guests. We're calling this the Gen Z panel discussion. And so we got two guests joining us today. I'm really excited for this conversation. We have Kate Garner joining us, who is a student at UAH. And she does a lot of really great social media and marketing work, including some excellent work that she's done for Student Eagles. And she's really well-spoken and really cares about a lot of these cultural issues, some of these controversial cultural issues that we're going to be talking about today. So we're excited to have her on the podcast. And then our other guest is Caleb Sarter, who is actually a high school senior here in Alabama. And he is a young conservative leader and educator, and he does a lot of tremendous work. And he is also really knowledgeable and talks a lot about some of these major political and societal issues that we're going to be discussing today. So really excited for this conversation, and thank you guys for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we're excited to get into some of the major current events and issues that are going on right now. And we really want to provide a good perspective and really provide some clarity on some of the things that are happening right now in the world. Because there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of confusion, I feel like, going on right now. And, you know, there's so many different viewpoints and so many different opinions that you hear online. So I think it's really good to try to provide some clarity and really try to get to the bottom of what's actually happening right now in this modern world that we live in. And so one of the issues that we want to open up with is the topic of ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, and really everything surrounding that with everything that's happening in Minnesota right now and the ICE raids and the deportations that have been happening under the Trump administration. I know this is a topic that is on a lot of people's minds. So we really wanted to get into it today and just share some of our thoughts and really try to provide some clarity on this issue. So I'm going to open it up for you guys to jump in and share any of your thoughts that you might have. What are your opinions on ICE? Do you think you agree with what the Trump administration has been doing? Any of you guys are free to jump in and share your thoughts.
Yeah, so overall, generally, my position has been I agree with what ICE is doing. I think it's a necessary, in some respects, you could call it necessary evil, but that's only really in the instances in which maybe there is wrongdoing or kind of, I guess, a misalignment, I guess you would say.
Right.
But I would generally agree with what they're doing. It's necessarily, we let a bunch of people in, and unfortunately, we don't know who they are. And we have people who are non-citizens. We've imported like close to 20 million, at least that we know of, into the country. So we have to get them out somehow. Now, regarding the raids themselves and kind of the backlash they've gotten, I think a lot of it is overblown and kind of based in a lot of misinformation. Like you'll get maybe a couple of clips on the internet of like, hey, this is what happened, and then get a bunch of people out on the streets and things like that. So I think it stems from a lot of people not being really educated on what's going on and not seeing the necessity of the ICE raids themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point that you raised about how a lot of people will just see clips online. And obviously, you know, the left has their agenda that they're trying to push. And there's a lot of good things, obviously, with social media and with all of the news that we have readily available right now. Yeah, with, you know, all the technology that we have in modern society. But there's a lot of upsides to that. But one of the downsides is that people can use short clips like that to post on social media, and then it goes viral, and then people see it. And a lot of people will believe whatever they see on social media without looking into it for themselves.
Yeah, a lot of times things on social media are way taken out of context.
Yes.
And I think that kind of fuels the fire of the left in a lot of ways, especially on the topic of ICE.
Yeah. And unfortunately, what we see in Minnesota is specifically with the Minneapolis population, a lot of them are more so radical than you've seen in other places. Mm-hmm. So it's like, for example, a lot more ICE arrests have happened in places like Texas and Florida, but you don't get the same response. Why? Because of the local population there. So when you have those short clips paired with the population there, they're incentivized to go out and interfere with the arrests. Then you have the local leaders as well, like the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor and lieutenant governor kind of speaking on it. They're kind of agitating them in a sense. We're talking about inciting violence, things like that.
That's the really dangerous thing, because you got people like Tim Walz who are basically encouraging protesters to go out there and assault ICE agents, and that's just making the situation worse instead of making it better.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we have to ask the question, why is this a problem only in the Democratic states instead of the Republican ones? I think that's because of the fault in leadership, not because of the fault of the ICE.
Yes. Yeah, because, I mean, look, you have to enforce your nation's laws. That's something that every nation has to do, or else you cease to have a nation. If you can't enforce your own laws, that's obviously a problem. And, there's an interesting fact, which a lot of people don't know, which is that Obama, during his administration, ICE actually deported more people than the Trump administration has ever deported. And a lot of people don't know that. And that's a fact that's just been covered up by the leftist mainstream news media. And I feel like a lot of it is probably Trump derangement syndrome, because they're like, we're going to oppose whatever position Trump takes.
I was gonna say, they only believe what they want to believe.
Right. And it's really, I think that stems from the framing of Trump as, Hitler 2.0, or, the framing of Republicans as Nazis, which it's interesting to try to, I feel like, understand why there's people who are so anti-ICE and anti the enforcement of our nation's laws. And I think it's because they really have believed the lies that the current administration is basically trying to enforce a Nazi agenda. And they basically believe, a lot of people really do believe, that ICE is a modern day Gestapo. And I think that's because of, again, all of these lies in the media and all these social media clips that we were talking about earlier, where people will just believe whatever they see online instead of thinking critically and thinking for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the main differences in this is that you are not sending these illegal aliens back to their you're sending them back to their homes. You're not sending them to a concentration camp or something.
Right.
There's a massive difference in that. We're not sending them to get killed, in an inhumane way or anything like that. You're sending them back to their homes where they legally belong.
I think there's two things. For one, people in the media, people who are talking to large audiences, have a responsibility to accurately convey the facts and to not misinform the people who are listening to them. But then also, individuals have a responsibility to look into the facts for themselves and do their own research instead of just believing whatever they hear online. And so again, like we've been talking about how people will just watch these clips on social media and they'll just go along with it instead of doing the research for themselves. And so I think that's, again, one of the major problems right now. And this isn't just a political issue. This is really an issue in general that I think is important to talk about, is that people have kind of lost the ability to think critically. And people have lost the ability to come to their own conclusions because they just believe whatever other people are telling them. So what are y'all's thoughts on that?
And I was going to say also, it's a lot like defund the police. It reminds me a lot of when that was going on here in America, trying to shut down ICE and trying to shut down the police. Those are the two institutions that are trying to protect us the most. And it's not going to work out good for your country if you take away your protection. Same thing for guns. I know I'm kind of getting off topic a little bit, but like keeping guns, us having guns is what has kept America safe for so long. Like look at the UK right now. They don't have guns, and they have a lot of the same problem that we do with illegal immigrants, and they don't have an ICE and they don't have guns. There's no way to protect themselves, and they're feeling it. They're feeling they're feeling that hurt from not having that protection.
Yeah, there's a lot of these issues that really are so obvious once you apply some facts and some logic. But that's where it's like, well, why can't they see this? And it's because they don't do their own research. They just believe whatever they hear. So do you guys have any thoughts on that? Why is it that so many people are so ready to just listen to whatever they hear online? And what's the solution? Because that's really what we should talk about. What's the solution to this?
Well, a lot of people, they don't really have kind of a North Star to orient themselves towards in life. They don't have, I guess, scripture or Jesus traditionally as we've known.
Well, some people are like questioning the existence of truth altogether. Like saying it's just my truth.
So they don't have a foundation at all to build upon.
I can't stand the my truths.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's very easily defeatable, but not. Yeah, it's easy to adopt.
Yeah, is it absolutely true that there's no absolute truth?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
The whole,
the
whole my truth plus the I deserve to be happy stuff we see going on combined, it's like explosive.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, very toxic mindset to
Yeah.
have. It's where you can admit no fault or guilt of your own, because whatever's true to me, and then whatever makes me happy, obviously it can have a negative effect if I think it's best for myself.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the reason why the situation with the illegal immigrants is so awful, considering the leftist approach on it, is that they believe that, you deserve to be happy. And if your happiness means breaking the law and crossing a border, well, then you deserve that, right?
Yes.
But
Right.
you don't, okay? It's not legal and it's not right. When people who are genuinely trying to get away from something bad in their country, they're genuinely trying to run, sure, they are looking after their own happiness, but eventually it's going to crumble because the people that are following them into the country are the drug cartels and the sex trafficking and
Yes.
the mob bosses. Like, if that's
Yeah.
what you're running from, like, it's just going to follow you. It's eventually going to crumble.
Well, yeah, and this is a little off topic, but the main problem is that we're not against immigration in general. If you're coming to make America better and align your values with what our Christian nation believes, if you're coming to actually tear that down and actively believe, you're fleeing the nation that has its beliefs, but you're bringing the same beliefs to the country. So eventually, don't Venezuela my America. It's the right ideology, and you have to realize that what has made America the standard and the American dream and everything is not the values that the Liberal Party promotes. It's the values that have been given by God. And you first off have to understand that and to agree with that. Yeah, don't Venezuela my America.
Yeah, and I've
That's
said
such a
this-
good point.
Yeah, that is
really
a good
good.
point. And I've said this before, but I'm not against immigration at all. In fact, I want immigration. I want non-Christians to come to my country from non-Christian nations so that I can spread the gospel with them as a Christian. What I don't agree with is illegal immigration.
Yeah. Yes. And I love what you said, Kate, about American values and the importance of having good values in your society. And I 100% agree that America is a nation that's built on certain values. And in order to uphold those values, we have to have some shared, agreed upon ideal within our society that these are the values that we're going to uphold. And that means that you can't just allow anybody to come into your nation.
Yeah.
And throughout all of throughout all of our history, we've done vetting and background checks to make sure that we're allowing people into our country who actually know American values and know American history and know what America stands for. And so as a nation, we're perfectly justified in standing up for what we as a nation believe in. So I think
and
that's really
That's
important.
a large part of the problem is that we have people coming to America who don't want to act like Americans.
Yes.
And that's the same issue that they're having in the UK. They have a lot of people coming to the UK who don't want to act like people who live there. And we see, like, have you guys been seeing how they're implementing Sharia law
Yes.
in some areas?
Yeah.
Like, it's not even...
Yeah.
It's not even England anymore, you know. They don't even have their own culture.
Yes, that's totally right. And the important thing is that it's values based. It's not racial. It's not
Yes.
racially based. Because
Yes.
a lot of people will frame it as you don't like these people because of their skin color. That's not it at all.
No.
The real issue here is values.
Yeah.
And values are important. That's really at the center of it. It's promoting good values and not judging people based on the color of their skin. Like Martin Luther King Jr. said, you should judge people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin.
Yeah. Additionally, on the topic of values, I think this immigration the immigration issue in general, I don't even really think the immigrants are the biggest problem here in the Minnesota problem. The issue is the leaders and their lack of also
100%.
having the American values as well.
Yes.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the one to make this. I mean, I'll make this example, but it's like this is very Confederate-esque because what you're doing is you're having very state and local leaders resisting the will of the federal government in a case that's very unlawful and basically just telling the federal government, go away, you have no legitimacy here. It's very Confederate-esque. Like, it's I haven't seen anything like this since 1865, honestly. Like, state and local governments, if you think about it, like resisting the will of the federal government this hard, sending people out into the streets.
And the Democrats are the ones who are doing it.
Right.
The
and
Democrat
like-
leaders right
Not
now.
only
Yeah.
that, but they think that people who have a different skin color other than white deserve to come to America because they aren't white.
Yeah. Talk about discrimination.
Yeah, for real.
All those
Yeah.
poor white people are trying to get in as well. I think one of the biggest issues, and Brady, you hinted on this, was that people now have a problem with their identity being attached to their skin color. They can't take away the fact that they're black and can't have conservative values. It all goes together in a pot. Same with the gay issue and LGBT values.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, I welcome you as your soul and your person, without saying them taking that, well, what about my identity that I'm believing that I am in? It's not about their values. They can't separate their identity based on the issues that the culture is pushing so hard. I think you see that specifically with the African American community, with it being like, if you have this skin color, then you will vote Democrat, and then you will do this stuff, and this is a life you're led, and that's one of the most discriminatory things you can do. But that's seen across all sorts of parties, not just that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I can speak to that myself.
Yeah.
And like they kind of expect you just to vote a certain way just because of how you look, which I mean isn't so, it's kind of racist, but it's all about liberating yourself from the notion of this collective idealism. That this Marx was very collective, right? But I mean, the gospel is very individualistic.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
Yes.
your own personal life, and
Your relationship with God.
right.
That's really important because I believe that the way to push back against it is by going back to biblical values and biblical principles, because the Bible teaches that all human beings are made in the image of God. And if you believe that we all come from the same line and that each and every individual is made in God's image, then it makes it totally absurd that you would ever discriminate against anybody based on the color of their skin. And I feel like the left is always trying to separate people into certain categories and certain identity groups. And that's what you were saying, Kate, like with the racial issue and also with the LGBTQ issue, it's all about making your identity the most important thing about you.
Yes.
Whereas instead of identifying as Americans, we're identifying as white, black, or LGBTQ, or whatever the identity group is. That's supposed to be the most important thing about you, according to the left. Whereas conservatives, we believe that the most important thing about you is that you're made in the image of God, and that you have unique value as a human being, and that, as the Declaration of Independence says, all men are created equal.
Yeah.
I mean, the moment once we all realize that we're all citizens, it's like that it all gives us something to work towards. Like,
And a divided nation is easier to conquer.
Exactly.
Like whenever it's not just that America is divided, but we're also each side is pitted against each other. And I think I totally agree with the whole unifying the nation thing, because that makes us all way harder to disconnect.
Yeah. As long as you're unifying on biblical values, because a lot of times when people throw out the word unity, they actually mean compromise. Like, come to my area of the unifying. But as long as we're unifying on what God says, then I'm totally for unity.
That's a really good point. A lot of Christians will use that to say that we have to compromise on our values or compromise on the truth for the sake of unity. But as soon as you start to compromise on truth, unity isn't worth it. So that's a really good issue that definitely should be talked about. It's important to stand for truth and stand for your values and what you believe in, instead of just trying to get along with everybody, which it's good to have compassion for other people. It's good to, obviously you have to care about other people, but you also have to stand for truth. And oftentimes standing for truth is the most loving thing that you can do for others.
so true. Yeah. I always ask the question whenever someone says we need unity, it's unity under what? Because I mean, like Hitler and his boys, they were unified. And Stalin and his troops, they were all unified, right?
Yeah.
But it's all about what you're unifying yourself around.
That's right.
And whenever somebody like blindly calls for unity, you always have to ask those follow-up questions, because you don't want to be grouped into something that it's like you have nothing in common.
Yeah.
Unity can be very toxic. There's a verse before the Tower of Babel, and it talks about they were all unified under one language, and that's in a negative context. That's not positive.
Yeah, and that kind of gets to the idea of collectivism, which you were talking about, which really the ideal of collectivism in whatever form it takes, whether it's socialism, communism, or Marxism, all of those forms of collectivism, the idea is kind of that we as human beings can make for ourselves a perfect world. We can make for ourselves a heaven on earth. We can build the tower up to heaven, and we can become like God. That's really the idea. But we talked about this in our last podcast, Jill, but every time that people have tried to do that, it's fallen flat.
Yeah.
And
And the left is looking more and more socialist every day. Like they are definitely unified under the wrong ideals. And one of them really is just plain flat out socialism. Like they're all rooting for it, and it's crazy.
Yes. And I think, so this is interesting because obviously we're talking about how the left is trying to divide us, but then on the flip side of that is that they're also for collectivism. So I think it's an interesting paradox, but I think the reason is because when you divide people based on identities, it becomes easier to control them.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's what collectivism leads to. It
That
leads to
divide and
government
conquer.
control. So if you can divide everybody, if you can, separate people into these different identity groups, which is what the left is doing, then it's easier to control those people. It's easier to collectivize the society and institute some,
And-
form of tyranny.
That's definitely what they're doing with the whole ICE situation.
Right.
Bring it back full circle.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true, and that's why the left, like, they're in their bag at like getting minority votes and things like
Yes.
that. It's because like you said, if you're divided, it's way easier to conquer, and that's why, like you said, we have to be unified underneath what we're built on, and just continue on those principles.
Yeah, I think that's so important because so many young people, so many people of our generation right now don't know what to believe in. I think that's important because for much of American history, people grew up knowing what to believe in. They might have still had differences on, whatever political issues arose at the time, but they all agreed on the central things. They all agreed on the most important things in life. And now I feel like one of the problems of this modern world that we're living in is that we can't even agree on those central things. We can't even agree on those basic truths. And that's really one of the problems right now in our generation is people don't know what to believe in. So I think it's really important. I think it's really important to return to those values that were central to the American founding and that really come from what we find in the Bible and what we find in God's Word, because that gives you something to center your life around. Otherwise, you're basically just adrift in a culture that has no shared values and no truth that you can hold on to.
And ultimately, what you're talking about is a revival. We want there to be a conservative movement, but first and foremost, we want those votes to be accompanied by a faith in God.
Yes.
And understand the God that they have, their God-given rights, their nation under God. We want them to know Jesus Christ is their personal Savior. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just about politics. It's really about culture and society in general, and what you're talking about, which is faith in God and belief in the Bible, and that's really because that has proved to be the best value system around which to build a society. People have tried a lot of other value systems, and the newest one that we're trying out now is kind of secularism. Like that has only recently made its appearance in human government, trying to build a society simply based on secular values, and the results in the past few decades have not been great for secularism.
Oh,
And
secular
so-
socialism.
Yeah, and so so again, your society has to be centered around some values. You can't just have nothing, because then all truth becomes relative, and then there's no direction for people. There's nothing for people to aim towards. And so what we're really talking about right now is what value system should we have? And the value system that built America and that built the West was those biblical values. And I think this is a really good topic, I think, to discuss, because one of the things we're seeing right now in Gen Z is a revival, like you mentioned, Kate. And so we're kind of seeing a return to church. We're seeing a lot of young people who are now deciding to go back to church and return to God. And so I thought this would be a really interesting topic to get into. So do you guys have any thoughts on why it is that people are starting to return to those biblical values?
Well, I heard that, just a little tidbit, fun fact, since we're getting into it, that more Gen Z goes to church more than their parents did. Isn't that wild?
Yes.
Because people always think of your parents as being like way more conservative or more religious.
For
than
past
the
generations,
next
it's been the
generation.
opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So it's kind of it's good to see. Honestly, it's refreshing.
Yeah. So why do you guys think that is?
I think it's the result of the negative impacts of secularism and how they're seeing the hopelessness and the lostness and how there's no lack of meaning, like you've been talking about. And I think really there's people in their hearts want that security that comes with an eternal knowing of their existence. I don't think you can try to toss that away, but it is always going to be there. It talks about what people talk about in Romans 1, when it says in their heart people know there is a God. And I don't think the secular worldview holds much water when you think about the desires of people's hearts. And I think people look back at the idealistic America and they say, I want that. Why don't we have that now? I think, interestingly, an overlap of this is the rise of farmhouse decor or even Polaroid films. I really do think it's related because people are wanting to go back in time to what their grandparents do, and really they're putting it in farmhouse decor or something like that. But
Yeah.
really, I think it is actually a yearning
Yeah.
for God in those simple times where there was hope in Christ. Yeah.
Yes, I really think it is. I think it is. I think it has a lot to do with meaning.
Yeah.
Like you said, because it's kind of like people have been offered this option of choosing to live a secular lifestyle, and basically the idea has been presented that there is no God and that we're here simply as a result of random chance and evolution over millions of years, and that's really all there is to the universe. There's no creator. There's nothing beyond this physical reality that we live in, and you live and you die and that's it. And that is really a worldview that's void of any meaning or purpose, because it means that life ultimately, in the final analysis, doesn't have any meaning. There's no purpose to our existence. Whereas the biblical view is that there is a God who created you and loved you and who loves you and who made us as human beings in his image. And that worldview, that there is a higher power, there is a purpose to our existence, that worldview is a lot more appealing than the empty, dark, and really depressing secular view that there is no God and that there is no meaning or purpose to the universe.
Yeah, and I think that not only does the left agenda not logically hold any water, like you were saying earlier, but for Gen Z especially, when they were much younger, and I've witnessed this firsthand, when the Gen Z generation was much younger, like let's say around elementary school, like at that time, a lot of Gen Zers still had a conservative or Republican view on things. But then as they started to get older, they experimented and, tested the waters of liberal ideals. And I think that the reason why we're seeing so many Gen Z people come back is because they've tested it. They've tested the left agenda, and they realize they compare it to how they felt back then and how they felt now. And they're really, being conservative, being Republican is a much happier way to live. And I think that they realize, like, even though maybe they felt like they were doing a social justice by believing in the things they were believing in, that it wasn't truly fulfilling them the same way that Christianity does, the same way that biblical beliefs do. And when now that we're seeing everybody go back to that, I think people are starting to wake up and feel that happiness again.
Yeah. So, So with Gen Z, it's very interesting seeing like that spiritual revival.
Yeah.
Because I think, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction.
Yeah.
In the 1990s and 2000s, you saw a very conservative view with the new atheism movement of like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, people like that, making very, I guess, like what seemed like very reasonable explanations for atheism, kind of make it popular, things of that nature. But they've been kind of just refuted in general, and you don't see a lot of people relying on those arguments anymore. A lot of people, they're really just filtering it through the lens of, okay, there's something out there beyond us, which is that's kind of the belief that's animated all societies for the past like thousands of years until like 15 seconds ago.
Yeah.
And then, so you see, I guess Gen Z coming back, they a lot of it, they don't know what it is, but they know it's out there. So there's just a lot of spiritual interest out there. And additionally, Gen Z, we've been through a lot with just like COVID-19, for example, the rise of pornography, things like that. It's like a lot of this, it's not explainable by just, hey, he wants money, so he's gonna do this. Like, it's good and evil. Like, we're looking at it through these lenses. A lot of Gen Z actually, they're really not even thinking of it in like political terms, like left and right. A lot of people just aren't interested in the two-party system. It's more so there's good and evil out there, and I need to figure out how I can get on the good side of things.
Yeah.
I agree completely. I think that's a beautiful change, and that it's a spiritual war. It talks about like we're not going against flesh and blood, but we're going against the unseen powers of this world. And I think that's so obvious now, especially when you bring in all the moral issues that politics is. Jill, I love what you're saying about how being Republican is actually the happier way. I mean, it's true. Actually, fascinatingly, there was a study taken, and liberals were much more likely to suffer with depression and even suicidal thoughts.
I can see why.
Same with being LGBTQ. There's a reason that people commit suicide, and I don't think that's because they're getting treated fairly. I think it's because they're literally depressed because their worldview does not have a God, and there's confusion and chaos in that they do not have any meaning and purpose for their life. But one of the interesting side effects of that is that liberals also were like, I'm remembering this off the top of my head, but they're like 80% more likely to say that feelings are more important to them than facts. when it came to their thoughts. And the Republicans, it was the exact opposite. It was like 80% more likely to believe in facts. And Republicans are also way more likely to be happy and satisfied with their lives, and then to also not have suicidal thoughts, which I think like these worldviews like do have effects. When people have their belief in God, they will be happier.
All right, I think we can just say it. Conservatives are generally happier people.
Yes.
Would you guys
Honestly,
agree with
and
that?
yeah.
There might be some exceptions, but in general, conservatives tend to be happier. Okay, that's my bold claim for this podcast.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I think that's really good. I think that's totally true. That, and a lot of it, again, it goes back to the meaning issue, because secularism has been tried and found wanting, and it really doesn't offer people with any meaning or purpose or even a reason to go on living in many cases. But the biblical values that built America and that built the West and that, you know, built the greatest nation to exist in the history of the world, those are the values that have proved to be the best for building a good society. So I think it's important. I think it's time for us to return to those values, and I think we're seeing that right now happening with Gen Z, with more and more people going back to church and more people believing in God.
Yeah,
Yes.
one of the interesting facts that I've talked to him about this, but how men are actually leading that church revival back. It's not women. For the first time in history, since I think around 2020, around COVID time, women have actually been attending church less. Like you can see the graph, and it's like this, and then now it's swapped roles, and the men are leading that. And I think that's very fascinating, especially because there's so much hate of men, you know.
Yeah.
And so talk about that, Brady.
Oh, okay. Well, I want you to talk about
okay.
it. I'm glad you raised it. So
No,
I
you
want
talk
to
about it.
because okay.
Right back to
I
me.
can't really speak to why the Gen Z women aren't
Okay.
I have an idea.
aren't as
we'll get to
conservative
that.
as the men. So maybe Jill and Kate, you guys can kind of share your
Oh, okay,
thoughts.
it's my turn now.
Yeah,
I want
Jill,
you guys
you can
to
go.
let us know.
You go first.
What are your
I'll go
thoughts
next.
on it?
Well, my thoughts on why is because the left agenda, they tend to pander towards women more.
I agree.
With the whole abortion, women's health care, women's rights. Not only that, but like if you're a straight white dude, then you're like bottom of the totem pole. But
Yeah,
if you're like
evil.
Yeah. But if you're like a woman, then people like the left likes to use the whole like women get paid less than men argument
Yeah.
too. Like there's just a lot that's going for women, quote unquote, in the liberal agenda, and I think that's why it's so enticing and why it gets so many young Gen Z girls kind of wrapped up in that,
Yeah.
and why we can see that kind of still progress onto college age and even adulthood, just because it's so enticing for the girls. And so I think that's part of the reason why the ladies aren't leading the revolution this time,
Yeah.
is because they're still kind of all wrapped up in the spider web.
Yeah, I agree. I
Whereas,
think it's.
oh, sorry.
Are
Yeah.
you good? Okay, I think it's all about feelings and not facts. You know, the things that they're promoting is, oh, well, it's really just love between this man and this man. So who are you to say love isn't real? And they're going to those emotional pitfalls that women are so easy. I mean, I'm going to say it that women are more emotional than men. You know, it's out there. I think it's true.
No, really.
I'm just going to say it. And I think because of that, they're easily targeting those emotional standpoints. They're never arguing facts, saying like, oh, well, abortion is actually killing a baby. They wouldn't say that. It's always going to be using emotionally appealing languages. I think even in the terms of communism and welfare, those are emotional words. Welfare being like the good of other people around you. Communism being community. Socialism is social interaction. Like
Right.
Point.
it's all emotional. Everything under there is tied to emotions, and that's really hard for women to be able to think about. Why is this actually wrong, even when it sounds so good? And I think another really important issue that we need to talk about is they've been taught so much about how career is the way to go, and that they just instantly have been taught wrong. So yeah, I think that's a big issue as well.
Yes. Yes. And kind of like we were talking about earlier with the whole issue of how people just believe whatever they see on social media and on the internet. I think that's a reason for why a lot of women might be more persuaded by some of these arguments that are feelings based. I think it's because, you know, again, in social media and online, there's a lot of emotional arguments that people will make, a lot of feelings-based arguments that people will make. And then young people who are watching these people talk on social media will just listen to whatever they hear online instead of doing the research for themselves. And so yeah, I think social media actually would be a really good topic to discuss right now, because I think, you know, we've talked about it kind of throughout the episode, and it's definitely a major issue right now with like all the technology and, you know, the developments in AI going on right now and ChatGPT. That's definitely an issue that's very relevant for Gen Z. So I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on this issue specifically. Like, what do you think should be our response to all of this technology? Should we try to limit social media or get rid of it altogether? Should we even use ChatGPT? Like, what do you guys think should be our approach to this issue?
Well, I'll speak to the AI question specifically.
All right.
Because I mean, it's so new. There's so many things going on.
Yeah.
So I live in Huntsville, Alabama. So there's a lot of engineers out there, and a lot of people in Huntsville actually are like working on the AI, developing it, testing it. What you'll usually hear from the developers is it's a tool. But I guess the deeper question is that no one asks is like, what type of tool are we building and who are we giving it to? And while at the same time it could be used for good, will it be used for good? Or how about the technology we use right now? Or are the phones, are they mostly a net positive or net negative to our lives? If you subtract it, would your life get better or worse? That's kind of the things you have to think about. And in this case, I don't think AI will be like used for educational purposes. And just looking at the state of society right now, I think we need more societal reformation before technological innovation.
I mean, just talking about AI educating us, we still see AI getting math problems wrong. Like ChatGPT still can't do my homework.
I can attest to
I don't
that.
trust it. And I don't know.
Trust ChatGPT for your math homework.
No, don't. And don't trust it for like any kind of hacks about history or any political ideology facts or anything like that, because we've seen people asking on ChatGPT online before political questions, and they always lean towards the left. So we know that they've been kind of fed this. I say they. It's been fed this information. I'm gonna get like exploded in the future. One of the AI robots come after me for saying it.
Yeah, AI.
But yeah, it's already been fed information. It already has an agenda. I don't trust it
Who's
one bit.
feeding it? Like that's no one can ask those questions.
Yeah,
and you kind of talked about the ethics of it.
AI definitely is biased in its belief system, if you want to say it has a belief system, but whatever.
In someone else's belief system.
Someone else's belief system. Something else, I do think technology at this point, we can't get rid of it. I think it is here, unfortunately, to stay. But I think we can use that, for God's glory. I think of it as the Roman roads. System like that's what God used to spread the gospel, was the uniting under the Roman kingdom.
That's a really good point.
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of a negative.
Little silver lining in there.
Yeah, but it's kind of negative, like you're all under the oppression of the Roman government, but that is how, with the one language, that the gospel is able to spread. And I think we could be in a similar time zone in the age of AI and technology.
That's a great analogy.
I think what's always the case with technology is that advancements in technology only give people greater ability to use it for good or for bad. Yeah. And it's really up to how individuals choose to do it with their in their own lives. And so I think that you can use AI to be more productive and to get things done. You can use it for good reasons. And I am all for that. So you guys might be more like against AI altogether, but I'm not against it completely. I think you can actually use it to get things done and to actually do research and learn a lot. So I think that's one of the good uses of the technology. And when it comes to social media, obviously there's a lot of downsides of social media. And I've talked to a lot of other kids who want to limit their social media use and cut back on that, which I think is great. And I think that social media, I definitely believe that there's a lot of problems with social media, but I do believe it can be used for good. And like you were saying, it's a great way to get your message out to a lot of people.
That's what we're doing right now.
Exactly.
That's true.
Without ChatGPT.
Without ChatGPT, I would not be saying any of these lines here. All these lines were built by ChatGPT. No,
I'm actually reading off my phone under the table.
Would you guys say that social media currently, the vast majority of users are using it for good or for not?
No, I mean, not if you're if you're not deliberately using it for bad, like you're trying to post fake news and stuff like that. Using it too much is still using it for bad, just for your own health, I think. And I think most people abuse it. Either it hurts themselves or they abuse it to hurt other people. You're expecting people to be good when they use it, but people aren't good. So there's gonna be a few instances where people do use it for good. This isn't for good, but I am homeschooled. I do math homework, but my math class is an online course where I only have a video of a teacher talking to me, so I can't ask him questions. So sometimes I will go to ChatGPT and I'll say, please teach me. Big part of the sentence. Teach me, not show me the answer. Teach me how to solve this problem. So once it teaches me how to do it, man, I'm being so hypocritical. I said don't use it for your homework. I'll ask it to teach me sometimes, though, and then I understand the problem, and I understand math better.
I think that's a great use of the technology.
I agree.
I think that's really good. The key is to use it for good reasons and not to let it take over your life, because a lot of people let it take over their lives. And really, I feel like what it's done is it's sort of all the social media, all the technology has really put us in a box, and it's kind of like set up these walls around us, and it's gotten us to just focus on what's immediately in front of us instead of actually going out into the world and having real experiences and real conversations, like face-to-face conversations with other people, which is what leads to a more meaningful life in the end. And so I feel like social media has had a limiting effect, because it's gotten people to just focus on what's right in front of them instead of having those real fulfilling experiences.
Yeah, I agree completely. Something interesting is how technology has outpaced ethics. You know, how like you're unable to I heard an interesting line. I'm going to try to remember it. But it was like, it's not about technically we can do it. It's about ethically should you do it. You know, and I think people don't think about, like, what can we do? And even though we're able to technically do it, doesn't mean that we should be doing it. Like, you think about cloning or IVF or something like that. That's sort of a big example where technology has outpaced the ethics of is this right? But I think with also ChatGPT and technology and everything in that, it is ruining your ability to think and to have memory skills and creativity. And you see those being part of the basic understanding of developing of the mind, and that's a really dangerous place. And also with data privacy is another area.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
And iPad kids.
Screenagers.
Dangerous. They might be the menacing to society.
I am scared of Gen Alpha. I will say that.
My biggest.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. Ethically, should we create the tool if we know most people will not use it for good?
Like if there's like a
really
1% that will use it for good?
Like if there's maybe like a 30% that will use it for good and a 70% that don't.
I feel like that would have been a good question to ask 20 years ago.
But
now it's like,
Right.
well,
Now we get to ask the question again with AI.
Yeah.
This is
true.
Well,
such.
I would say like if you put enough rules and regulations and restrictions on it so that 30% is the only 30% getting to use it, or that you have to become part of the 30%, which becomes the 40%, which becomes the 50%, in order to use such said thing, then like you can only use ChatGPT if you're willing to use it the right way. Or you can only use AI in general if you're willing to use it the right way. Then all of a sudden that, what was it? Would you say 30, 70? That 70% of people using it bad is going to disappear.
Yeah, this is a really interesting issue because it's such a new topic that, you know, we as a society or we as a culture haven't had to address before. So it really is, it's kind of like an open-ended issue. And I think this is a great one for students to write articles about, to really think deeply about. And I think this is an issue that people, especially in our generation, can really contribute a lot of thinking to. And
As we should.
Yes, definitely. So
AI is growing up with us.
It is.
yeah, so it's definitely something that's important to think about, and really, I think it's something that we shouldn't just rush forward in accepting and basically adopting as a part of our lives. I think it could be used for good, but it's something that we definitely need to think about. So I think that's really important. So we're running out of time today. We really covered a lot of issues, and I think these were some great topics. I want to close though. We addressed a lot of problems in modern society and modern culture, but I want to really focus on what the solution is. And so we talked about allowing social media to take over your life, and I think that is a problem that a lot of people have, where all of these issues going on right now seem overwhelming. And it's almost like, what can I do about it? What can I do to make a difference when we have all of these things happening in the world and all of these things happening in America and all of these problems that we're facing and the rise of all this technology? It really seems overwhelming at times. And a lot of people are wondering what they can do about it. But I think it's important for everyone to remember that your choices matter, and that what you choose to do really does matter. And I know that sounds obvious, like of course choices matter. Everybody could agree with that, but that's something that needs to be reemphasized, because you can choose not to let the technology or the social media take over your life. You can choose to make better decisions. You can choose to affirm good values, and you can choose to stand for truth and to stand up for what you believe in. Those are all choices that you can make. And that's what's so important to remember, is that you don't have to allow yourself to be overwhelmed. You can take responsibility for your own life, and you can really take advantage of all the gifts and all the opportunities that God has given you, and really choose to make better decisions and to try to become a better person and to try to serve other people. So there are a lot of solutions. You just have to be willing to take responsibility and to make those choices. So those are some of my closing thoughts. Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
Always remember that the ultimate battle is spiritual. So
Yeah.
get in a state where you're spiritually in tune with the Lord. Don't always rely on your party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, to tell you how you should necessarily live your life at all times. You leave that to God. And additionally, just like get in touch with the real world. Get outside.
Touch some
Get-
grass.
Yeah, go barefoot in the grass. Look at nature
Yeah.
and understand the God who created it. Look in your community, love your family, get involved on the local level. Don't seek national solutions for local problems.
Yeah, focus on your own community. Focus
Exactly.
on your family, your friends,
Right.
all those relationships that you already have.
That's
super
what'll
important.
matter in the end. You know, who's going to
Yeah.
visit your tombstone? Those are things you need to remember.
Yes.
So affect people's have real change. You know.
Yeah, what do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one
All right.
closing thought really fast.
right.
Something else is also, you shouldn't believe the lie that you're too young. You know, in Gen Z to make a difference. We're at the age where we are able to make a difference. I think that's true politically, but also biblically, you know, and spiritually. I'm reminded of Jeremiah 1, where he talks about when the Lord calls Jeremiah and he says, "Who am I? I'm but a youth. Don't send me. I can't do this." And God says, "Who are you to say I am but a youth?" Like, do not say I am but a youth, but to who I send you, you will go. To who I tell you to speak, you're going to. I think it's the same thing politically. So don't use I'm going to have lots of years to get involved in politics or like church later on, because you may not. And you should be involved now, and don't have your age as a cop-out to be
Yes.
involved.
Yes. I agree with that.
All right. Well, this was a great discussion today, guys. I'm so glad that I got to meet both of you again and see y'all again and talk. Before we close out, I do have a Bible verse like I usually do. Today we have James 1:22. Be doers of the word and not hearers only, otherwise you are deceiving yourselves. Short, sweet, simple, but full of truth.
Amen to that. All right. Thank you guys again for joining us. I think this was a really great conversation, and it was really fun to have you guys on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. And thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you again next time.